Okay. Is this where we were? Okay. Oh, so this is okay. We're continuing with tissues. Got it. Smooth muscle composes the walls of which organs or structures? Okay, I don't know this one, so we have to look at it. Smooth muscle and the composition of which organs or structures. Go ahead and review it. Muscle tissues are able to generate forces. Their elongated cells, also called muscle fibers, can shorten and thicken. When stimulated by the nervous system, muscle fibers pull at their attached ends, which moves body part. The three types of muscle tissue, skeletal, smooth, and cardiac, are introduced here and discussed in more detail in Chapter 8. Skeletal, approximately 40% of the body by weight is skeletal muscle, and almost another 10% is smooth and cardiac muscle combined. Skeletal muscle tissue forms muscles that typically attach to bones and can be controlled by conscious effort. For this reason, it is often called voluntary muscle tissue. The long thread-like cells of skeletal muscle have alternating light and dark cross markings called striations. Each cell has many nuclei. Okay, can you scroll up so I can read some more? The muscles built of skeletal muscle tissue move the head, trunk, and limbs. They enable us to make facial expressions, write, talk, sing, chew, swallow, and breathe. Smooth muscle tissue is so called because its cells do not have striations. Smooth muscle cells are shorter than skeletal muscle cells and are spindle-shaped, each with a single centrally located nucleus. This tissue composes the walls of internal organs, such as the stomach, intestines, urinary bladder, uterus, and blood vessels. Unlike skeletal muscle, smooth muscle cannot be stimulated to contract by conscious effort. Thus, its actions are involuntary. For example, smooth muscle tissue moves food through the digestive tract, constricts blood vessels, and empties the urinary bladder. Okay, so let's go back to the questions. So the intestines, the blood vessels, the urinary bladder, and the stomach, from what we read. And the blood vessels. The two major categories of connective tissue include connective tissue blank, which includes loose and dense connective tissue, and blank connective tissue, which includes cartilage and bone. Do you remember this? This is from yesterday. I think it's proper and specialized. The first one. Proper connective tissue, and then specialized, which is cartilage, blood, and bone. The muscle tissue that is involuntary and contains cells that are striated, unnucleated, branched, and are joined end to end by intercalcated discs is called, okay, I don't think we've gotten to that. Let's read it because I think we're still reading about muscle. Keep going down. It's not skeletal muscle. Keep reading. Okay, centrally located nucleus, spindle shaped with, okay. Okay, this was about smooth muscle. Keep going because they have nuclei. Cardiac muscle tissue is found only in the heart. Its cells, which are striated and branched, are joined end to end, forming complex networks. Each cardiac muscle cell has a single nucleus. Where one cell touches another cell is a specialized intracellular junction called an intercalcated disc, discussed further in section 8.6, cardiac muscle. So the answer to that question is cardiac because it's a type of smooth muscle that is different than the other one. Cardiac. Okay, next. Muscle tissues do what? What do you think they do? Cover body surfaces and cover and line internal organs, transmit impulses for coordination, regulation, integration, and sensory perception, or contract in response to stimuli from the nervous system.
I think it would be contract in response to stimuli.
Right, that's correct. That's good. Okay. Match the type of muscle tissue with its description. Striated voluntary in muscles usually attached to bones. What kind of muscle is that? Voluntary muscle is another name for skeletal muscle. So the first one is skeletal. The first one on the left side is skeletal muscle because they're attached to bones. Um, Non-striated involuntary muscle in the walls of hollow internal organs is smooth muscle. And cardiac muscle is in the heart, because cardiac means heart. So that's where they are. Okay, you can get this. What are the three types of muscle tissue?
Gotta be smooth skeletal.
Right, and cardiac. That's right. That was a little easier, right? Okay, now this one we haven't read yet. This is about nervous tissue. So we haven't read this at all yet. So let's read that. Okay, let's see. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is found in the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. The cells responsible for the actions of the nervous system are called neurons or nerve cells. In addition to neurons, nervous tissue includes neuroglia or nerve glue, shown in figure 525. They lend support to and are crucial to the function of neurons. Okay, scroll up. Neurons are different than all other cells because they can receive and send information or stimuli. A neuron has a unique structure with three parts that allows for its specialized function. The cell body, or soma, looks like a generalized cell that we studied in chapter 3. However, it has two types of processes that look like wires hanging off of it. On the side of a neuron, there are usually short but numerous processes called dendrites. These are the structures that will receive stimuli. The longer wire is called an axon and functions to send signals to other cells. As a result of the patterns by which neurons communicate with each other and with muscle and gland cells, they can coordinate, regulate, and integrate most bodily functions. Neuroglial cells. I need you to move your page. Neuroglia support and bind the components of nervous tissue, carry on phagocytosis, and help to supply growth factors and nutrients to neurons by connecting them to blood vessels. They also play a role in cell-to-cell communication. Overall, they maintain a clean, healthy environment for neurons. Nervous tissue is discussed in more detail in section 9.1, Introduction. Okay, let's go to, I think it probably is neuroglia, but let's go to the questions and see. Nervous tissue also, yeah, it would be neuroglia, what we just read. N-E-U, N-E-U-R, O-G-L-I-A. Good. Okay, this is back to what we read. Which type of muscle lines blood vessels?
think would be cardiac muscle.
That's heart. Smooth muscle is the so cardiac and smooth muscle are both smooth muscle, but cardiac is in your heart only, not blood vessels. So you have blood vessels in your heart, but smooth muscle lines blood vessels all over your body. So smooth muscle there. Okay. Okay, let's check our answer. And then we'll go with muscle tissue that is found. Okay, so what kind of muscle do we find in your digestive tract and blood vessels?
I think would be smooth muscle.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. Good job. Nice job. Which of the following are characteristics of cardiac muscle tissue? We have to select all that apply.
I think it could be this last one. Cells are.
I don't think they're striated because that's voluntary muscle. I remember the one about cells are joined by discs. I remember that being part of it, and branched being part of it. I don't remember if they have a lot of nuclei or not. We can look it up. It's not a problem. We have to look for cardiac muscle. So go ahead and click on it and go to cardiac muscle. So that's skeletal muscle. We don't need that. Scroll down. That's smooth muscle. Keep going. Okay, cardiac. Cardiac muscle is found only in the heart. Its cells, which are striated. Okay, so you were right. They are striated. I was wrong. They are striated and branched. So branched is on the list. Are joined end to end, forming complex networks. Each cell muscle has, or sorry, each cardiac muscle cell has a single nucleus. A single nucleus. So they don't have a lot. Where one cell touches another cell is a specialized intracellular junction called an intercalcated disc, discussed further in section 8.6. Okay, let's check our question and see what we have. So they're branched, the second one. They're joined by intercalcated discs, and they are striated. Yeah, good job. I should be right now. Yay, okay. Okay. Now, the muscle tissue that lacks striations, that doesn't have the streaks, that's smooth muscle. That's smooth muscle again. They don't have striations. Okay. Okay. Which cell type has diverse functions such as supporting and binding nervous tissue, carrying on phagocytosis, and supplying materials to neurons, ciliated columnar epithelial cells, muscle cells, or neuroglia. Okay. It says neuroglia support and bind the components of nervous tissue, carry on phagocytosis, and help supply growth factors and nutrients to neurons by connecting them to blood vessels. They also play a role in cell-to-cell communication. So the answer is neuroglia. Neuroglia. Good job. Nice. And I think we're finished. Congratulations. We finished all the chapters that are due for um, that are due for the 11th. We don't have chapters due until March, so I think we can um, slow down on our chapters. Do you want to do did she assign you any bonus questions or a study guide? Because you have a test coming, don't you?
Yeah, she did give us a study guide.
Or do you want to do the PowerPoints? What do you want to work on?
We could go over the PowerPoints.
The PowerPoint? Sure, we can do that. So this is chapter 4, DNA, which we all remember that as being a really long and dense chapter. Okay, so here it's showing us some pictures. We have a primary structure with an amino acid chain, basically, a secondary structure where we have the um, the helix, the alpha helix, and then we have the tertiary structure with the chain of polypeptides when the DNA comes together, and then the quaternary structure with the assembled subunits. How do your ribosomes, and remember, ribosomes are like the factories that make the protein, right? How do your ribosomes know which protein to make and how to make it? Well, your DNA, can you scroll up a bit? Your DNA in your genes gives them the recipe or the blueprint for it. Okay. And so here's a picture of the cell with all the structures in the ribosomal and um, how the instructions leave the nucleus, they go to the cytoplasm, and then they go to the cell factory. Okay, that's just a picture of what takes place on that slide. Now here it's showing you base pair molds. I'm gonna move. Can I move this out of? Yeah, I can. So I can see. And can I make this? Okay, scroll up a bit. Yeah, because I can't see the whole slide. Okay, so base pair units, what they've done here is slice it apart so you can see the pattern. But this is just how the helix forms the base pairs. So guanine always pairs with cytosine, adenine always pairs with thymine. So that's what she's showing you here. It's just a picture of the DNA base pairing system that we learned about. Okay, so a tiny mistake can be fatal. um, and here, she's giving you nonsense words so you can see what it looks like. Gibberish up here, right? If you change one amino acid, in a huge protein, it can destroy the protein's ability to do its job. And she gives you an example. There are many, but she gives you one example. Replacement of a single glutamine with valine in one polypeptide chain of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein in your blood. If you put the wrong protein in place, if you make the wrong substitution, you end up with a sickle cell disease where the cells, the hemoglobin, the red blood cells, instead of being round, become sickle shaped like a crescent moon, and they don't carry enough oxygen and they don't flow properly. They get clogged up in the bloodstream, and people have all sorts of complications from that. And many times it becomes, the crisis becomes fatal. It leads to a lot of chronic conditions, but sickle cell episodes can be fatal. And the disease itself is almost always fatal by itself. Not to mention if you have other conditions besides that. So DNA is a double helix, two strands twisted around each other like a winding staircase. RNA is usually single-stranded and has a structure like protein. Both of these are genetic material. Nucleotides are the building blocks of nucleic acids. So remember, amino acids build proteins. If you're going to get a protein, you have a bunch of amino acids. When you get nucleic acid together, you build nucleotides. And nucleotides are the building blocks of the genetic material that build proteins in the first place. So that's how that comes about. So in a nucleotide, you have a phosphate group, you have this nitrogenous base, and you have this amino acid here. If you scroll down a little bit, so you have a phosphate group, a sugar, and a nitrogenous base. So that has three parts: a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. Deoxyribose nucleic acid. So deoxy means you have two sugars. Okay. Deoxyribose nucleic acid. So there's a phosphate group with your acid over here. Okay. There are four types of nucleotides, sorry. Four types of nucleosides. There are purines and pyrimidines. Pyrimidines are on the left, thymine and cytosine. And purines, adenine and guanine. So a nucleotide has a sugar phosphate backbone, a nucleotide, and a base. DNA is built using millions of nucleotide molecules, but just four types. the sugar and phosphate are always the same. So there's a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogenous base. So the nitrogenous base is different depending on which protein you're making. Okay. These are the 4 DNA bases, and she gives them to you with their chemical compositions: adenine, guanine, and then I'm imagining that underneath that is thymine and cytosine. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the rules of complementarity. Adenine binds to thymine, cytosine binds to guanine. Okay, that's the base. For DNA, that's the rule. Now, Chargaff's rule says A equals T. The amount of adenine in any sample of DNA always equals the amount of thymine in the same sample. And G equals C, the amount of guanine in any sample of DNA always equals the amount of cytosine in the same sample. So where the complementarity rule says they bind to each other, Chargraph's rule says the amounts of complementary bases are equal to each other. Now, why is that? Well, RNA is based on ribose and is single-stranded. But the extra oxygen in RNA makes RNA less stable than DNA. RNA also has a different base. There's 3 types. Actually, there's 4. I don't know if she put it on here, but there's 3 types listed: messenger RNA, ribosomal RNA, and transfer RNA. They all do different stuff. Why do we need a genetic code anyway? Well, it's easy to copy the nucleotides and still maintain good consistency with what you started with. And that's one reason. And each amino acid has at least one 3-letter codon assigned to it. Codon is the term for 3 nucleotides in a row on a nucleic acid. For example, if the DNA on your gene reads TAC, thymine, adenine, cytosine, that's code for put a methathione here. So they know that that's coded for methathione, for example. And here's an example of the cDNA and deduced precursor sequences of BOBP ascension numbers. So that's an example of how the letters work and how they transcribe the protein. Codons are like three-letter code words. And again, we're back to how your chain works. So you're just talking about how you have the chain and the chain unlocks the base pairs and then the base pairs fall into it. I think that's why she went back to that. Okay, so DNA has two big jobs. Okay, so the first one is to copy itself perfectly whenever the cell divides. When you copy something, you replicate it. So it's designed to be replicated. The second big job is transcription. Copy itself perfectly whenever the cell divides and copy only the specific instructions to make proteins in this cell need to function. That's transcription. Now, DNA versus RNA. Replication, making a copy of itself, happens when the cell makes a second copy of the DNA in preparation for cell division. Okay, so DNA versus RNA, why do cells need transcription? DNA stays in the nucleus where they are safe. Genes are segments of your DNA, but genes are the instructions to make proteins. Ribosomes need the instructions to make protein. Ribosomes are not in the nucleus. They may be free in the cytoplasm or attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So basically what she's saying is we want to reproduce the DNA. We want to replicate it. But in order to replicate it, we have to get the genetic information out. And because we want to get the genetic information out, that's where the messenger RNA comes in to transfer the information from the nucleus out to the cytoplasm and onto the ribosome. Okay, so making proteins is divided into two steps. There are two steps, and we know what they are already. Transcription occurs when the cell makes an RNA complement of one specific gene. Translation happens when a ribosome uses the mRNA copy of a gene to make a protein. Okay, so translation, this is the first part. Translation is translating the genetic code of nucleotides into the language of amino acids, a protein. This requires three types of RNA. mRNA is the coded message from the nucleus. tRNA brings the amino acid to the growing protein chain. rRNA makes up the ribosome that leads the mRNA instructions and facilitates the reaction. Each tRNA carries one specific amino acid and an anticodon that bounds to the codon for that amino acid. For example, if the mRNA requests a leucine, the tRNA anticodon would be AAU, and that RNA would carry only leucine. So here it's just telling you about the codons versus the anticodons. Here's a picture of the DNA helix, again, that we've seen. DNA transcription takes one gene of the whole chromosome and makes an RNA complement called mRNA. mRNA leaves the nucleus through a nuclear pore. Then, remember, it goes to the cytoplasm or to the ribosome, right? As in translation, the mRNA template, a series of codons, is read by a ribosome as instructions to make the proper protein. tRNA bring amino acid to the ribosome so they can be joined. Scroll up. So that they can be joined into a new protein. But the job of messenger RNA is to carry it outside the nucleus. The job of transfer RNA is to bring amino acid to the ribosome. Okay, so here's, this is I think it might be similar to a chart in your book, just turn the other way. This is the codon translation chart and how the DNA causes an RNA copy to get made that is part of how the proteins are built. So those are the codons and the anticodons that you see on this one. I'm grabbing something. Okay, let's take a look at the next part of this. So, okay, so now we're back to the string of DNA protein. And what we want you to see here is that this is a picture of sequences. So like she's highlighting the sequence for you so that you can see how it it does this. This is the sequences of the actual protein letters and what they make when you do it. I think that's what she's trying to say here. She doesn't have any kind of um, verbiage, but I'm assuming that this is a real protein chain, and she's trying to show you that this is what, not necessarily what it looks like in your body, but this is what your proteins look like. Now, how does it work when it's one thing to have genes, but genes guide our heredity. They guide what features we have, which traits, like what color hair you have, what color eyes you have, how tall you are to some extent, whether you have ears that are flat on the side of your face or whether they stick out, things like that. Which traits you have depend on which version of protein your body makes, how much they make, which proteins are made by which cells, and other factors. So she's trying to show you that gene expression, the traits that actually get seen are or experienced, are a result of a lot of things. That's what this slide is saying. Here's a picture of DNA, several of them. Each of these cells has the same DNA. Why aren't they identical? Again, for the reasons that she stated. They're made in different parts, they're made in different quantities, and they're made in different places. So let's see. So now, it's all fine and good to have this transcriptional process by which we're going to make protein. But how do you regulate that so that the body makes the right protein? How do you do that? Well, all DNA is the same, so all genes are the same. The cell is programmed to transcribe only specific genes. If the mRNA copy of a gene is made, the ribosomes will translate them into protein. Now, sometimes you get point mutations. A mutation is a change. And usually, mutations, sometimes biology will tell you that it's an adaptive mutation, but many mutations are bad. Um, so, mutations can cause problems for animals, even human animals. Mutations can cause problems. That comes from substitution of nucleotides, which we talked about with um, sickle cell anemia. It can be a problem with changes in the codons. It can be um, a problem with the amino acid protein, and they can be harmless. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're more severe. Those are point mutations. Sometimes there's a whole shift in the molecule where not just a codon or a letter gets dropped, but you could have a whole nucleotide disappear. You might have put it in correctly, and you might have changes after that. Or you might have a change that changes all the amino acid after the mutation has taken place. And whenever frame shift mutations happen, that's always disastrous. I wonder if she's going to give you specific examples of these. Okay, so here's some sample exam questions. Information is transferred from the cell nucleus to the ribosomes via what? Well, when you go from the nucleus to the cytoplasm where the ribosomes are, that's messenger RNA, I think. The type of RNA that makes up the ribosomes is rRNA, ribosomal RNA. So that's letter A. What else? Making an RNA copy of a single gene is what? Well, when you make a copy, okay, so hold on, let me look up that one to make sure. But I think that's transcription. So making an RNA copy. Yeah, making an RNA copy. Transcription is where you make the whole Transcription is making the copy of the whole sequence. Um, but let me see if I can find. Yeah, that's transcription. Transcription. So transcription is making a single copy of the. That's transcription. Copying the DNA in preparation for cell division, that's replication. Copying DNA in preparation for cell division is replication. Now, which of these nucleotides is not found in DNA? Which one's the odd one out for DNA? You remember?
I think it would be your cell.
That's right. Yeah, uracil is only in RNA. Okay, which of these pairs of nucleotides will always be found in the same amounts in DNA? So remember Cargill's rule or Chargill's rule that adenine and thymine are always in the same amounts, but you don't have that on the list. Adenine and thymine you don't have. The other one is cytosine and guanine, which is answer C. Guanine and cytosine. And here's some pictures of some proteins. Proteins are amazing machines, it says. Enzymes are almost always proteins. Enzymes are machines that put things together, take things apart, or rearrange parts. Substrates get used up during these reactions, but enzymes don't. Every reaction that enzymes facilitate or make happen could happen spontaneously, just really infrequently. Enzymes lower the energy of activation for a reaction. So they make it more likely that an enzyme occurred. Okay, I don't see anything on there. Enzymes make life possible. Putting things together is called anabolism. Taking things apart is called catabolism. Anabolism, catabolism, taking things apart. So I'm not sure what we're looking at. Probably a machine. Can you scroll down a little? It looks okay. So yeah, it looks like here it's comparing to something where you start with cellulose molecules. Um, there's um, it says cellulose, glycogen, it says glycogen granules to muscle tissue, and then starch granules in potato tubules. So this shows you the different molecules and how similar they are. Glucose monomers in each one. I think that's all of those. Okay, let's see. Exam 1 is Monday, February 6th. Okay. All right, so this is a review of everything that we covered with the tissue types. And there are 4 major types of tissue. Epithelial tissue covers body surfaces, lines hollow organs, body cavities, and ducts. It also forms glands like your thyroid gland, your thymus gland, different glands in your body. Connective tissue protects and supports the body and its organs, binds organs together, stores energy, reserves as fat, and provides immunity. Connective tissue. Muscle tissue generates physical force for movement, and nervous tissue has a variety of functions. I can't see them all, but it sends and transmits signals. I know that one. Changes in a variety of conditions and responds by initiating and transmitting nerve impulses, signals that help control and regulate body activities. So nervous tissue, think of nerve cells, nervous system responses like fight or flight, or like responses that would send signals through your spinal cord, your brain, things like that. That's your nervous system, your nervous tissue. Okay, so we're doing an overview of epithelial tissues. Okay, so she's repeating here what she said. They cover organs and the body. They line body cavities. They line hollow organs. They have a free surface and a basement membrane. They are avascular. The cells divide frequently. The cells are tightly packed together. They're classified according to cell shape and the number of cell layers. So the next slide is about cell shapes and the arrangement of cell layers. So we have simple, one cell. We have pseudo-stratified, that looks like it's more than one layer, but it's one layer. It's just taller. And stratified that has multiple layers. Stratified cells have multiple layers of basement membrane. Cell shapes, if they're flat, they're squamous. If they're cube-shaped, they're cuboidal. And if they stand up in columns, they're columnar. Okay. So then, simple squamous epithelial tissue is a single layer of flat cells that diffusible substances pass easily through. They line the air sacs and the blood vessels. Simple cuboidal they're a single layer of cube-shaped cells. They line kidney tubules, which is something that was in your study questions. They line kidney tubules and they cover ovaries. They also line the ducts of some glands. Simple cuboidal. Okay, so then we have columnar epithelial tissue. A simple columnar is a single layer of tall cells. The nuclei are usually near the basement of the usually near the basement membrane at the same level. They often possess microvilli, which remember are those hair-like structures, right? That pass mucus out. We talked about that yesterday. They often have goblet cells. They line the uterus, the stomach, and the intestines. Pseudostratified columnar are a single layer of elongated cells. They have nuclei at 2 or more levels. They appear striated, and they line the rest. Those are the pseudostratified columnar. Sorry, not the simple columnar. They often have cilia, and they line the respiratory passages. So simple columnar have microvilli, not the cilia. They have microvilli, so they stick out. But pseudostratified columnar are the ones that have cilia that take out mucus. Okay. Okay, so what other kinds of epithelial tissue do we have? Well, they have stratified squamous epithelium. They have many cell layers. The top cells are flat, and they can accumulate keratin. This is where you get keratinitis, or sometimes you get that really dry skin that's hard, like a callus that's crusted. That's like a keratinized issue. The outer layer of skin is the epidermis. They line the oral cavity, the vagina, and the anus. Transitional epithelial tissue have many cell layers like the stratified squamous. They're cube-shaped and elongated. They line the bladder, the ureters, and part of the urethra. Okay, then we have some less common epithelial tissue. Stratified cuboidal, which is 2 to 3 layers of cube-shaped cells that line the ducts of mammary glands, sweat glands, and the pancreas. And stratified columnar with its top layer of elongated cells, cube-shaped cells in deeper layers line part of the urethra and the pharynx. Okay, glandular epithelium is composed of cuboidal cells that are specialized to produce and secrete substances. So she hasn't talked about glands at this point, but we talked about how certain glands have epithelial cells, right? But we're not going to talk about glands till we get to the endocrine system, and that's chapter 7. That's why it's the next lecture. There's going to be more about it. It's composed of cuboidal cells that specialize to produce and secrete substances. There are 2 types. There's endocrine glands. They're ductless. They're hormonal glands. And exocrine glands, the ones that go from the structure to the outside, like the skin, have ducts, like tear ducts, for example. Sweat glands are exocrine, right? Okay, so how do you distinguish epithelial and connective tissue? The differences are obvious under a microscope, but we don't have one of those. At least not here, not now. Epithelial tissue has many cells that are tightly packed in sheaths, and doesn't have blood vessels, or not many of them. Connective tissue has a large amount of extracellular material, the matrix, separating widely scattered cells. Connective tissue most of them have a significant network of blood vessels. That again makes them different from epithelial. Connective tissues are the most abundant tissue type. That means that's what we have the most of. It usually consists of cells that are widely separated by the matrix the cells secrete. What do connective tissues do? Well, they have a lot of functions. They bind structures. They provide support and protection. They serve as frameworks. They store fat. They have a matrix, and they have varying degrees of vascularity, blood vessels, and blood flow. Okay. Depending on where they are. Okay, now we're going to get to the types of connective tissues. We talked about the types of epithelial. Now we're doing the types of connective tissue. So connective tissue fiber types, there's fibroblasts or fibrocytes. These are often made, these are protein fibers that are most often in connective tissue. Things like collagen, thick protein fibers. great tensile strength, abundant in dense connective tissue, hold structures together, especially tendons and ligaments. Then we have elastin. They're thinner protein fibers. They're elastic, as their name implies, and they are especially found in vocal cords, air passages, ears, and the artery walls, things that need more flexibility when you still need structure, but you need flexible structure for vibration and pressure to be able to happen. Okay, so then you have another slide on the types of connective tissue. And so she's trying to list them here, I think. So there's areolar tissue. And it's mainly fibroblasts. It's collagenous fibers. There's elastin. It binds skin to structures. It's beneath most epithelia, blood vessels nourish nearby epithelial cells, and it's also between muscles. Okay. Adipose tissue makes cells that are called adipocytes. What does adipose tissue do? It cushions, it insulates, it stores fats, and it's beneath the skin. It's around the kidneys and the heart, adipose tissue. Okay, so there's different types of connective tissue. There's elastic connective tissue. They're abundant in elastic fibers. There's some collagen fibers. This is the attachments between bones, the walls of large arteries, the airways, and the heart. Bone is osseous tissue. It's like a Latin word for bone. Osteocytes in lacunae. Solid matrix supports and protects. Bones, osseous tissue from the blood cells, and it attaches, forms, bones are attachment sites for muscles, and of course, they provide our skeleton, right? Okay, then we have dense connective tissue that consists of packaged collagen fibers, elastic fibers, a few fibroblasts. They bind body parts together. Things like tendons, ligaments, and dermis, they have a poor blood supply. So as a result of that poor blood supply, you may not heal as fast from an injury. Like if you get a tendon injury, it can be harder to heal because you don't have a lot of blood supply to that area. So it takes longer for nutrients to arrive and you don't heal as quickly. I'm just changing my position. Oh, that's, okay. So we've got, okay, that's the same, I think. Let me see what, if you said anything else about that. I think those are more pictures of um, the connective tissue fibers. Yeah, this is yeah, you can go on. This is a picture of them. Um, now we're going to go into cartilage, okay? Cartilage, remember, is that connective tissue that's a little bit flexible, like the tip of your nose is cartilage, the top of your ears are cartilage. Those are cartilage. It's a rigid matrix, okay? You have chondrocytes in lacunae, and it has a poor blood supply. But then we have three kinds. We have hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. Hyaline cartilage is the most abundant. It's at the ends of bones, and it's also in the embryonic skeleton. When you're in the embryo and you have, I'm sorry, when you're an embryo in your mother's womb, right? You you have a lot of hyaline cartilage that forms that. Now, elastic cartilage is flexible, and it's, again, as I said, it's the internal ear, it's your larynx. Go ahead and scroll up so we can see what fibrocartilage is. Fibrocartilage is very tough. It's a shock absorber, and it's in your intervertebral discs. So in your back, you have bones in your spine, and each of your cervical vertebra, you have cervical vertebrae, you have thoracic vertebrae, you have lumbar vertebrae. And between them, you have little cushions. Those cushions are cartilage. Those cushions between the discs are cartilage. You also have it in the meniscus of your knees, for example. It's part of your knee. And a lot of athletes you'll hear will tear their meniscus. It's an extremely painful operation, and you have to really come back from that because the cartilage tears, and you can't, cartilage doesn't regrow like it. So typically they have to sew it back together, and then you have to recover from the injury. And because the blood flow is low, that can take a while. So menisci, that's plural of meniscus, if you're wondering. But okay, so let's look at the cartilage types. Okay, so there's three types of cartilage, as we've talked about, and she gives you some examples. Elastic cartilage is like your external ear and your larynx. Your fibrocartilage is a very tough shock absorber, intervertebral discs, and the menisci of your knee. Okay, let's scroll up. Okay, so she talked here a little bit about blood. Blood has a fluid matrix because blood is a specialized connective tissue. Blood has a fluid matrix called plasma, red blood cells are in the plasma, white blood cells and platelets. So red blood cells typically carry oxygen and carry away byproducts. White blood cells are used for immune defensiveness, among other things. And platelets, one of the things that platelets do is deal with clotting factors. So clotting factor transports waste, oxygen, and nutrition, defends the cells of your body, and it's throughout the body in your blood vessels. Okay, then we have types of muscles. Okay, so the muscle cells or the muscle fibers are myocytes. Contractile muscles have a very good blood supply. Okay, there are three types of muscles that we've talked about. Skeletal muscles, these are the voluntary ones. So if you know the answer to a question in class, you raise your hand, you use a series of skeletal muscle to do that. You have smooth muscle and you have cardiac muscle. Smooth muscle and cardiac muscle are involuntary, meaning we don't have conscious control over them. Doesn't mean that they're not important. Okay, go ahead and scroll up. Okay, so here's another picture. Here's a picture, a stylized picture of the cells. Skeletal muscle is attached to bones. It's striated, it's voluntary, and it has many nuclei. Smooth muscle lines the walls of organs and blood vessels. It's not striated, and it is not voluntary. Cardiac muscle is in your heart. That's the only place you find it. Think of cardio, means heart. It's striated muscle, meaning has streaks. It's involuntary and it has intercalcated discs. Okay, nervous tissue. Here she's giving you a picture below again of what a nerve cell looks like. It's found in the brain, the spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Functional cells in this tissue are neurons. So basically, neuron is another name for nerve cell, is what she's telling you. And they're responsible for sensory reception and motor signals. Sensory reception is going in, info into the system. And motor signals is what comes out into the cell. Okay. Tissues are a similar group of cells with a common function. And the study of tissues, because there are people who only study tissues. There are people who only study like one organ system. But the study of all tissues is histology. That's called histology. There are 4 primary or major tissue types. epithelial, connective, scroll up for me, and muscle and nervous. There are four major types of tissue. There they are. Remember that blood and bone are tissue, but they're specialized connective tissue. So they're under connective. Okay. So, example, okay. These are properties of epithelium. Consists of a few cells and lots of matrix. No, that's not true. Covers body surfaces and lines cavities. Yes, that's true. B. Its basement membrane anchors it to deeper tissues. That's true. So I would say it's E, B, and C only. This tissue only has one layer of cells. That's going to be simple columnar epithelium, because simple means it's one layer. These cells function to filter and allow substances to flow through them. Those are, I believe those are the simple squamous cells. This tissue, which makes up the skin, serves as a barrier to infection, protection against abrasion and water loss. That is stratified squamous epithelium. One distinguishing characteristic of connective tissue is that it consists of cells separated by an abundant, yes, that's true, an abundant extracellular matrix. These specialized cells, which are found in many connective tissue types, contain large amounts of lipid. They're adipocytes. This tissue is found in the external ears, epiglottis, and auditory tubes. Well, the external ears, they have elastic cartilage. This kind of muscle tissue is under involuntary control. Okay, that's going to be smooth and cardiac. So that's going to be A and C. Involuntary control means you can't control it. So smooth muscles like the ones in your intestine, the ones that are moving in your esophagus, things like that. And um, the cardiac muscle that's found in your heart. And this tissue has striated cells that are long and multinucleated. Skeletal, smooth, nervous, or cardiac long cells. I say I think that's skeletal muscle because cardiac muscles are short, nerve cells have nuclei, but okay. This major tissue type forms glands. That's epithelium. Epithelial tissue. These protein fibers can stretch and recoil to their original shape. That's elastin. That's where they're elastic. They can snap back to some degree, right? Elastin. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Oh, okay. Did you have your test on the 6th or did you move it to next week?
She said it was gonna be this week.
Oh, okay. Well, it's if it's gonna be tomorrow, then good luck.
Yeah,
I wish you the best. Let me know how it goes, okay?
yeah. Thank you.
All right, Daniela, take care. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.